Hello world, I'm Johnny Littletoe, and we are doing some sort of cooking experiments. Uh, Today I am going to show you how I fillet an Indian mackerel, and the weird little experiment I have over here of making some garum. Uh, I'm not doing it the correct way. Don't follow what I'm doing, it could get you sick. However, I figured I'd bring you along for the ride and give you some pointers on filleting, which will actually be reasonably useful. So I've got two Indian mackerels here, two different methods that I use to fillet. The first is kind of the standard way that I was taught for just getting the fillets off, which basically you're going right behind the gill there, and you're going to want to cut at an angle towards the head, the fin, not the gill. You're actually wanting to go a fair bit behind the gill there. That gets behind the gill plate and is a good guide to just cut down. Now from there, you want to twist your knife and just guide the knife along the edge of the spine. This is probably the best way to make nice full fillets. However, easy to cut into those guts. So once you have the fillet out, you want to just clean that up, basically cut it off. This is going into my fish jar. And then this side, just make sure you don't have any leftover rib bones or the stomach lining can be left behind. Sometimes you want to give that a little bit of a wash off, especially if you cut into the guts. Now the pin bones that run along here, those are generally small enough to be edible, but you can just pluck them out. Tweezers make that a lot easier. The pin bones get smaller as you go down, so I usually take out the top few, just more of a texture thing than anything. Basically, I keep going until I reach a bone that becomes particularly difficult to get a good grip on. All right, and we set that aside onto a paper towel just to dry off, assuming that you're going to cook it right away. Now, something I'll usually do outside of when I'm making this garum, you can actually, even just with your finger, any extra meat that you miss there, you can just scrape off. I actually did a really good job. Usually there's a bit more that I can get off of there. And then basically flip it over by the tail so that you always have the back facing you. Do the exact same thing with the other side. Dig in, twist, and just follow that spine. Now, I kind of messed that up, but that's fine. Part of this is going into the garum anyways, so now we have that left over. In this case, again, I could scrape off some of that extra meat, but we are just going to plop that in the jar. For those of you unaware, garum is basically it's a type of fish sauce that comes from fermenting fish with basically the bacteria that's already inside of their guts. And you add a lot of salt in order to make sure that the get off the pin bones there, the right bacteria propagates within your fermentation process. because you want the bacteria that doesn't want salt. Now, you probably noticed that last one was a bit of a messy ordeal. Sometimes I can get away with less guts there, but if you are particularly worried about rupturing the gut system, another thing you can do, same thing here. We're just going to cut that in, but this time we're going to immediately flip it around. Don't stab yourself. Cut in there. And now, if we just crack back the head, the guts largely come out intact. So I'll just drop in there. Just gonna tear off the lower fins there. Now, in this case, you want to find the anal hole and just slice in there. That helps take off the rest of the guts. You can give that cavity a little wash down. Make sure you got everything out of there, though at the very least, you'll have taken out the stomach in a pretty reliable manner. Now, generally with saltwater fish, you don't want to put the meat too much into the under fresh water. Not actually sure why. That's just what I was taught. Down. That said, you've still got the stomach lining and a lot of things in there that you would otherwise be throwing out anyways. Now, it's going to be fairly difficult to get a good grip from there, so when I take off the head first, I actually start from the tail, cut down a bit, and just hold that as we cut through. Again, using the spine as your guide. So got that there. Once again, pretty clean cut, not too much meat left on there. Same thing on the other side. Toss that in the fish jar. Now I should really be salting the previous layer before putting this in, but for convenience sake, I'll just be salting and mixing that after the fact. And remove that membrane. Now, you can remove the skin, but with mackerel, at least Indian mackerel, I'm pretty sure it's true of the larger ones as well. The skin doesn't have any serious scales on it, and honestly, it crisps up for a nice texture and flavor when fried. Another thing you can do if you're worried about these pin bones is just make a V-cut right along there, and that makes it really easy to you lose a small amount of meat, but it is very clean. I do know some people who are particularly sensitive to bones, so if you are one of those, or if you are cooking for one of them, that's going to be your best method, is to kind of cut these into fish fingers, I guess, and make sure that all of those bones, nothing's going to come out as a surprise. Toss that in there for now. Now, One reason why I really stress this is an experiment is nothing, I haven't gone by any kind of recipes or anything of that sort for this garum. So the actual amount of salt is somewhat arbitrary. I'm not, unlike what is recommended, I'm not leaving this out in the sun. I'm actually leaving it in a warm area, well, basically under my sink. Just because given I am in Canada and it is getting a little chilly, I can't leave it outside in the sun that much. And during the day, I don't want to be heating my entire apartment up to, I think it's about 25, in order to make sure that this stays at the right temperature. Now, under the sink isn't going to make much of a difference. But it is at least a smaller space. If I need to heat it up, I can honestly just run some hot water for the few degrees I need. All right. So we've got our fish remains in there. That is another thing about garum. Normally you would use like chunks of whole fish. So this is really the main reason I decided to make this was a method of wasting less. I will be getting quite a bit less of the final product than I would if I had putting in whole chunks. However, I am also just the only thing that gets wasted if this doesn't go to plan is the salt, because everything else would have been tossed away anyway. So just give that a bit of a stir. Hopefully the sounds aren't reaching the microphone too much. Anyway, pack that down a bit and then add a bit more salt. Basically, you want to see that everything is at least a little coated in the salt there for this to work. Again, I'm not using a particular recipe, so it's really just going by eye. Really, the main experiment here is seeing, is this an easy enough recipe that you can kind of fumble around with it a little bit. Anyway, put that back on. Garum also calls for an open jar, but I went with just a jar with a small hole for ventilation. I will say, so far, the actual material, or the actual substance that's fermenting in there, kind of smells like a fish market. The first batch that I put in there has been fermenting for, I want to say 3 weeks now. And yeah, no, it smells like slightly sweet, a little fishy, but not like strongly, like it's clearly fish, but not like that pungent fishy smell that you'll sometimes associate. So over to the side, I have my cast iron heating up here, but as far as seasoning goes, I honestly have, I have a little bit of truffle salt. Actually, we'll give that a shot. Anyway, salt and pepper is honestly all I ever really use for this. I'll do that on 2. That might be a bit much. I know that's really strong stuff. And then on these 2. Just sprinkle that on. Crack a pepper. Always want to start skin side first, especially to get that nice crispy skin. You kind of want to keep it most of the cooking skin side down because it doesn't burn as easily. I need to adjust that just a little. That back. Right. A little more salt. There we go. Get these two. The paper towel's mostly just there to get them a little bit drier so that they fry up nicer. And crack some pepper. Amateur cooking videos with people you shouldn't be taking advice from, but I figured the process is neat enough. And slide this over here. Oh. How's our angle here? There we go. So that pan's just heating up a bit. Don't mind the leftover pepper in there. Actually, that's heated up too much. I'll actually get a good layer of oil evenly distributed there. Clean it up a bit. Some fresh canola oil, which in my research, any kind of like cold pressed oil or anything that has been kind of processed in whatever way is not going to be the best, but it also has a higher smoke point, so that's kind of what you need to use for frying. So I ended up going with canola. It's really, as far as I can tell, it's not any better or worse than any other heavily processed oil. It's starting to get hot there. I'm gonna try to remember. Well, that's my sign. I'm gonna try to remember which one of these is has the truffle oil. Might have been a little, could probably used a bit more heat. Usually if it's up to the right heat, the skin will immediately start to shrivel. I usually have more of this, but create just the smallest little fish burger there. That out. Always make sure to wash your hands after handling raw meat. So typically I'm looking for, in this stage, the meat to kind of come to about a 3/4 level of cooked through, just on the skin side. And then you're just looking for a quick sear to finish off the flesh side. Real lemons to top it off would be the nice fancy way to do it. I just don't use lemons enough typically, so we're just using bulk lemon juice. For the sake of the ASMR, I'm not turning on a fan until the video is over. Definitely use a hood fan when you're cooking these, or frying anything really. If you're frying at the right temperature, you're creating a little bit of smoke. It's just how it is. Ooh. And that's looking about right. I'll take, oops, you will take you. And you guys. Skin could use a little bit more of a crisp, but that both requires generally a bit more oil, and I don't want to end up burning any of the skin, so. Actually just gonna turn off the heat using a cast iron. This is generally enough to just finish it off. I think these two were the truffle salt. That should be enough. Yep, that's just nicely browned there. And then we just finish with a bit of that lemon. Don't want to drown it or anything. I do make my own tartar sauce. I don't find it works quite as well with Indian mackerel. This has kind of a more savory, meaty taste compared to like cod, which is, I definitely preferred cod with some a little bit of that there tartar sauce, but should let these rest. But just want to give a quick bite. Magnifical. Not sure the truffle salt made a whole lot of difference. Just, I know the bigger piece was. Yeah, honestly, just use regular salt. It's don't waste your fancy stuff. But yeah, easy dish, great in omega-3s. I find it delicious. It is one of the fattiest fish, really high in omega-3s, yet it doesn't, I wouldn't describe the flavor as super fishy. Like, you're clearly eating fish. The texture is that, like, a little bit firmer, but still flaky. The flavor, I would say it's more towards chicken than most other fish I've tried. So it's very, what's the term? Inoffensive, I guess. But yeah, that is what I have been working on. Hopefully that is of interest to someone out there. We'll see. If not, I just make these for fun, really. But for now, thank you for watching. I have been your host, Johnny Littletoe, and I will see you next time.